and welcome to a very special workshop that Metana is doing in collaboration with Decentraland. Today we're going to be talking about a very important topic to many of you who are essentially watching. It's going to be about how to prepare a CV for your first Web3 job. So we're going to be talking about exactly what you need to be doing when it comes to making a CV, what you need to include, and making sure your resume or your CV stands out from all the other people gunning for the same role as you. The hopes of this workshop is to actually get you closer to getting hired at your very first Web3 job. And this is not focused just for beginners or people transitioning into Web3. This can be essentially useful for anyone actually trying to get into Web3 or any tech related industry. It's not just specific for Web3 roles, but it is going to be very technology heavy. We're going to be talking about how a software developer or a recruiter who's looking to hire a software developer would want a CV to be. Before we get into the session, let me first introduce myself to you. My name is Ashane Pereira, and I am from the content and curriculum team at Metana. Now, Metana is the world's best coding bootcamp provider, and we're not the only ones to say it. Forbes named our Web3 bootcamp the best bootcamp with a job guarantee. Well, you'll see in this session itself, our curriculum is purely focused on getting our students hired. We teach them only the skills necessary to get hired. So with that out of the way, let's move on to understanding what we're going to be doing in today's session. To kick things off, we're first going to be talking about the hiring landscape. It's important that we understand the hiring landscape because I understand currently there was a huge number of layoffs when it comes to software developers in the United States. Around 65,000 people got laid off. But at the same time, there are well over 65,000 new jobs that got added into the software development industry in the United States as well. So we need to understand, and I want you guys to understand why many people, many software developers, many blockchain engineers struggle to land a job or even struggle to land their very first job. So that's what we're going to do first. We'll understand why that is and what the current hiring market is like. Then we're going to go into the resume part of things. We'll understand how you can build your resume. And then we'll talk about exactly what you need to put into that resume. And we'll talk about the hierarchy to your resumes. Because when it comes to these CVs and resumes, there's a hierarchy to the elements you put in there. That's something that most people don't really know about. And that's something that most people actually get wrong. But anyone watching this, I'm very sure after this session, you'll never get that wrong because we're going to go into very much detail on that topic. Afterwards, we'll go into detail about the most important things in your resume. That's going to be experience if you're a seasoned developer or a blockchain developer, or projects if you're transitioning into Web3 or a beginner in the Web3 industry. And that's probably going to be the biggest takeaway that you will have from this session. Next up, to wrap things up, we got two different topics that we're going to be talking about, and that is what recruiters are looking for. The key to getting hired, at least I think so, because I come from a recruiting background as well. I have helped over 100 different students get into Web3 and other tech-related roles. So I'm going to tell you what exactly recruiters are looking for at a candidate at the stage you're in. And afterwards, we'll look at how to get your resume through any ATS checks. If you don't know what an ATS is, don't worry, stick around. You'll exactly understand what it is and how it works and how you can get past those. So that about sums up what we're going to be talking about today. So anything resume related when it comes to getting a tech related role, we're going to be talking about today. And you essentially won't have any trouble landing interviews after you follow what we're going to be talking about today. So now let's get on to the first topic we're going to talk about today. Let's understand how the hiring landscape is like at the moment. So when it comes to the hiring landscape, you'll be very surprised at what I'm about to say. 99% of all companies out there, when it comes to any industry actually, are looking to hire people. And that's a fact, and I'm not just making this up. See, you might struggle to believe this because you might think, hey, if that's the case, where are all the job opportunities? Where are all the application sites? Where are all of these job postings? Well, that's not where people always hire. That's not where companies always go to hire. You see, when it comes to this statement that I made, 99% of companies are always looking to hire, the key word is looking to hire, right? So just because they don't post a job post on LinkedIn or Glassdoor or Web3 jobs or whatever job board you're looking for, does not mean that company is not open to hire good talent. So that's what we're going to be talking about. That is literally what the current landscape is like. It's important that you get out of the mindset where you guys are thinking, oh, if there aren't any job opportunities, there's no way I can get a job. That's not the case. You want to be able to present yourself to all of these companies and communicate the fact that you are the solution to all of their problems. You see, when a company comes across a person with great talent, great people skills, good charisma, and a nice work ethic, they will make room for that person in their team. 99% of the time, that is what's going to happen. Because you see, you think getting a job is hard. Well, hiring someone is equally, if not harder. Because yes, people think like you have to apply for 100 different roles to get hired, but it's on the flip side of things, a recruiter has to go through hundreds of different candidates just to find that perfect candidate. So the moment they see someone who can properly communicate their skills to a recruiter, they're gonna jump at that chance, and essentially that's gonna solve the recruiter's problem, right? You need to understand, a recruiter has one giant problem, and that's finding good talent, and that's what you're going to be solving for them. So using this workshop, I'm going to teach you exactly how you want to communicate in order to get roles. Let's look at an example, right? Imagine you have two developers, developer A and developer B. Developer A is probably the world's best developer. He knows everything about anything when it comes to smart contract development, connecting a function, whatever. He knows everything when it comes to that. But one caveat is he doesn't really understand how to communicate that with a recruiter, and he makes a very lackluster resume. His GitHub is just a bunch of projects that don't really have any presentation to them. It's just code upon code upon code, and rather there's no proper readme files, or it's not organized properly. By no means am I saying this developer is a bad developer. I'm saying he's one of the best developers out there. But on the flip side, let's look at developer B. Developer B is not a bad developer, but he is a very average developer. Like, he can get by. He's not as capable as developer A. But what he has is understanding about how to properly communicate his skills. He's not going to oversell himself. No, that's not what he's going to do. He can properly communicate to anyone saying, hey, these are exactly what I bring to the table. This is how I can integrate myself into your team. This is how I synergize with people. So he understands how to communicate. The thing is, if these two developers apply for the same 100 roles, developer B has a much higher chance of getting hired. And that's essentially the truth of it. Recruiters, the main thing that recruiters want is for you to communicate clearly what you bring to the table. And that is essentially a solution to their one big problem. So that is what essentially the hiring landscape is like. Yes, there were a lot of layoffs, yes, but at the same time, there were a lot of new jobs that did come into the market as well. And when it comes to these resumes that you're making, you don't want to just send them through applications. That's not what you want to do. You want to send them, you want to email them to recruiters, you want to email them to other developers working in companies you'd like to work. Because I've seen a lot of success from students, my own students, who have done that and gotten permanent positions. For example, one of my students, actually, I'm really proud of this person. He started working on an open source project of a company. He started working there, and then he connected with one of the developers there through GitHub, and then sent them their resume over, and then about 2 months down the line, he got hired at the same company. So that's why I said, when it comes to these 99% of companies that are looking to hire, they're not always going to post their jobs online. They're just passively on the lookout for good talent. And whenever they come across good talent, they're going to make time and they're going to make space for them in their team. So that's really important for you to understand. And it's really important that you get that mindset when it comes to getting into an industry like Web3. Next up, let's actually talk about how to build a very strong resume. And we'll start off by one thing that I absolutely don't want you to do when building a resume. And this pretty much applies to any resume you make, not just for Web3. And that is my golden rule: do not include fluff. Now, what do I mean by fluff? Fluff is essentially anything that a recruiter can't really use to make a decision, right? So when it comes to recruitment and a recruiter, what they're trying to do is make a decision. And that is what you want to understand. You want to present to them through your resume all the information and data that you can present them to help them make a decision whether to move forward with you or not to move forward with you. But most of the time, you want them to move forward with you, right? So you want to present them with all of the necessary data to make that decision. And fluff is stuff that won't essentially help them make any sort of decision. So if you have a current resume and you go through it and you want to identify what is fluff and what is not, the easiest thing is soft skills. It's not going to help you at all. Things like I'm a problem solver, things like I'm a good team player, I am good at critical thinking, that's not something that the recruiter can take your word on. That's not something the recruiter considers when making a decision. You see, those things recruiters understand through your work ethic, by getting to know you more in like the interview stage or like a live coding session. You don't include those in a resume because it does not help a recruiter whatsoever. And whenever you are putting anything on your resume, a lot of people like to exaggerate things, like say, oh, I am an absolutely brilliant person who does this really, really well. You see all of those like new words that you're adding: brilliant person, great personality, or triple X, like triple 10 coder, something like that. Those words aren't helping recruiters make a decision. What I would recommend you to do when you are writing a resume is make it, just boil it down to plain facts, completely just facts. That's it. Tell the recruiter about facts, factual things about yourself. For example, imagine you're a recruiter with 5 years of experience. You can say, hey, I'm a recruiter with 5 years of experience. I've been working in the blockchain industry for 3 years of them. The 2 years I've been working as a backend developer using Ruby on Rails or something like Java or even Python. You see, that is more than enough for your summary. So most people, I would say I've seen around 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 different resumes in my life. Most of the summaries are like 2 paragraphs or even 1 paragraph of utter BS. It never helps me make a decision. If you're writing a summary, 1 sentence or 2 sentences, literally say how many years of experience you have, what your tech stack is, what you're skilled at. That's enough. That's more than enough, because that is much more helpful to a recruiter than you saying, hey, I am a great problem solver. I have worked with a team and I have great synergy with them. I've been doing like blah, blah, whatever. It's not going to help. Boil it down to only facts. So that's what we're actually going to move on to next. We're going to focus on data and results. And when it comes to data and results, the key word is results, right? So later on in this workshop, I am going to be teaching you about a method of presenting your data in a way that has a lot of impact when it comes to someone reading it. So stick around for that. But for now, what I want you to understand is, if you look at this, right? So people who say I'm a problem solver, and people who say, hey, I led a team of 5 developers that worked on the UI of an application, and by the end of Q2 or Q3 we were able to increase customer satisfaction by 20%. Who are you going to hire? It's pretty obvious. It's going to be the second person, because the first person is giving you an unquantifiable or a qualitative piece of data, while this second developer is giving you a hard fact that is quantitative. So it's like it's a pretty obvious decision on who any recruiter is going to hire. And that's one of the biggest pitfalls that I see with software developers. They just don't know how to properly communicate their skills to any recruiter. But we're going to fix that. So don't worry about it. We're going to fix that. So look at these examples up on the screen, right? So that's important. That's how you want to present yourselves. So don't use fluff. Instead, use pure facts and pure data. And the question that a lot of people ask me when I tell them to do this is, hey, what if I haven't measured my impact? What if, like, for example, over here, I just said there's a team of 5 developers. That anyone can know how your team was, but the percentage of the impact, when it comes to that, if you haven't measured it, I would recommend you to start measuring it, because results are really important. Whatever you do, the result is what actually matters. That is really important. If you haven't really measured anything up until now, start measuring it. If not, don't sweat. You can actually estimate. That's perfectly fine. Whenever a recruiter asks, and this is going to be very rare, I've never come across a situation where a recruiter asks, hey, so you say you improved customer satisfaction by 20%. How did you get that number? That barely ever comes up in question, right? So that's not something that usually comes up in question. But whenever it comes up in question, don't lie about it. Just say that was an estimation. We did see some good sentiment, and that was an estimation that me and my team came up with. That is perfectly fine, and that shows that you're an honest person, and you didn't falter, you didn't lie. You properly told them, hey, this is what I did, this is the impact, and this is what I think it helped with when it comes to a result. So that's how you want to build a resume, in terms of do's and don'ts. Avoid fluff, and then just present facts and data that are purely result driven, because that is what helps a recruiter make a decision. Now that we know what to do and what not to do, let's actually look at the hierarchy and what you actually need to put in your resume, because there is a hierarchy to a resume. And there are many cases where resumes literally get dumped and candidates not even get considered because they didn't stick to this hierarchy. And the thing you need to understand is recruiters aren't looking for this hierarchy. That's not what's happening. It's just, if you don't follow a proper hierarchy, you're not properly communicating your skills and your information to the recruiter properly, and that misunderstanding is what leads to getting rejected. The recruiters aren't looking for, oh, okay, is this section coming first before that section? That's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. I have to make that clear. It's just that when you put a section that needs to come in the forefront of your resume all the way in the back, chances are the recruiter is not going to read that, and they're going to think, oh, you don't have this skill, oh, you don't have this piece of experience, so I'm just going to reject you. That is why hierarchy is important. You want to be able to present the most important data first, and the less important, the cherries on top, later. That's how you want to do it. So let's talk about what to prioritize. First, using the space of your resume, and then going into specific sections, right? So if you look at your resume, the first page, obviously the most important page of your resume, and I wouldn't recommend ever making a resume more than 2 pages. I would never recommend that. Recruiters get very annoyed at that. They don't want to spend time. So the thing is, get into the mind of a recruiter, right? So for example, me looking for a new person to hire, I'll probably get like 200 to 300 different resumes, and I expect the resume to be short and simple, because I'm going to skim through it. I'm not going to take minutes to read your entire resume. That's just how it is. So if I have to read 3 pages, I'm not going to read that resume. I'm just going to put it aside and move on to the next, because the thing is, I have 300 resumes to go through, and I'm very sure I'll find a perfect candidate in that pile without having to read that entire 3-page resume. So that's why I recommend always try to make your resume fit into 1 page if you can. If not, 2 pages, understandable. Me personally, 2 pages, perfectly fine. I'll go through it. But more than 3 pages, recruiters don't really go through. They'll probably go through the first page. They obviously do that. They don't like skip through it. They read the first page, they go to the second page, they skim through the second page, they see a third page, they're not going to read it. And they're just going to put it aside. And yeah, so first page, really valuable. Now let's look at this page itself. The most valuable area of this first page is going to be the top left corner, because that's where your eye is first going to look at. And that's where you need to put the most important sections in. Afterwards, it is going to be, if your resume is 2 different columns, it's going to be the left column that's most important. Then comes the second or the right hand side column. And if your resume is just 1 column, then it's fine. You don't need to worry about like the sides or anything. It's just imagine you don't need to worry about the sides or anything. What's important is what you put first on the top left corner. And most of the time, a good resume, I would say, just take 2 columns in 1 page. That lets you fit more data into your resume into 1 page. Rather than having to go into 2 different pages. And one myth is, you know what, I'll tell you about that myth because it relates to ATS systems later on. It's regarding columns and how ATS systems handle columns. The thing is, ATS systems do not have any problem with columns. You can have any number of columns. The ATS system will identify them as columns and then read the data as columns. So you do not need to be afraid of having columns in your resume. In the older days, when ATS systems were just starting out, then it was a problem to have multiple columns. ATS systems would do all sorts of stupid things, but now you don't need to worry about that. ATS systems are very advanced. They are essentially going to have no trouble reading multiple columned documents. So yeah, with it out of the way, let's get into exactly what you want to start off with. It's not your summary, because that's always what I see. There are some exceptions to that rule though. It is if you have over 5 years of experience, you want to start with a summary, because chances are within that 5 years of experiences, you have worked at multiple different roles. And it's important that you summarize what exactly you did in a short sentence so that recruiters know what they're going into. In that case, I would recommend starting off with a summary and make sure to highlight the fact that you have over 5 years of experience. That I would say is very important, and that is the only situation I would recommend you start with your summary. Then, where do you start? How do you start? You start with your experience section, if not your project section. If you are a developer already with some sort of experience in Web3, you put your experiences first. And if you are a beginner transitioning into Web3, you start with your projects. So that is how the hierarchy of your resume goes. So first things first, obviously you're going to have your header with your information and everything. That's obviously going to be there. That's not considered the first thing in a resume. That's usually just the header, the header and the footer. When it comes to the content, the first thing you need to start off with your experience or projects. Then you go into your skills and then your education. And if you have space, you go for a summary. So that is how I would suggest you to lay out your resume: experience or projects, skills, education, summary. The most important thing is going to be experience. And a key tip is always make your resume not readable, but able to skim through. What do I mean by this? So recruiters don't read your entire resume. They skim through it and they want to see certain keywords or buzzwords present in your resume. That's how they make a subconscious note saying, oh, this is a good person to consider. So how you do this is by bolding or highlighting specific keywords. So, for example, imagine the example that I said, led a team of 5 developers to improve the UI of an application and improved the customer satisfaction by 20%. In that sentence, you want to bold the fact that you led 5 developers, and then you want to bold the fact that you improved customer satisfaction by 20%. So that way, I don't need to essentially read the entire sentence to understand the fact that you are a software development lead and you have the result of 20% increase in customer satisfaction. I can literally just skim through that entire sentence. So you want to apply that same theory to the entirety of your resume. And you'll be wondering, okay, what about skills? When it comes to the skills section, I see a lot of people put all of their skills into one giant blob of words. So it's just like word, comma, word, comma, word, comma, word, comma, word, comma, word, comma. And that's really hard to go through. Instead, what I would recommend is you group your skills into specific categories, right? So you want to start off, again, to this also there's hierarchy, right? If you're trying to get into Web3, the first set of skills you're going to have to highlight is going to be Web3 skills. So what you want to do is put a subtitle saying Web3 skills and list down the best Web3 skills you have. Then again, a new subtitle saying Web2 skills or any other software development skills you have, list them down, and then a third one saying DevOps skills or something, and then you put all your DevOps skills there and whatever else skills you have. So that way, without having to read through a giant blob of words, I understand you have skills in Web3, I understand you have skills in Web2, you know a little bit about DevOps, and maybe you even know a little bit about some other tools that maybe are good cherries on top of the cake. So that essentially is what I want you to understand with this key tip. Recruiters skim through resumes, they don't read through resumes. They do read through resumes, but that's only after they've filtered it down to 5 to 6 resumes that they are properly considering. Right? So that's really important, and that is the hierarchy to all the sections in your resume. So now that we've talked about the hierarchy, let's actually take a closer look at the most important sections, experience and projects, and how you want to present them to recruiters in a way that they feel like you're the best candidate for this role. So when it comes to presenting experiences or projects, there are 2 different methods that you can present them to recruiters or anyone actually reading your resume. And one of those methods is objectively far better than the other. So let's look at these 2 methods that you can use, or these 2 approaches to presenting things to people, essentially, not just in a resume, in anything. People, majority of the time, like to present their experience and project based on responsibility. And I'm pretty sure you guys, or majority of you guys, have already done this in previous resumes. It's where you have this experience. For example, imagine you worked at some company for 4 years or something. You're saying, hey, this was one of my responsibilities. I was responsible for this. I was responsible for this person. I was responsible for making sure this happened. And you just list down all of what you were responsible for. That it's okay to present it that way, but it's not as effective as what I'm about to teach you next. And that is achievement-based representation. You're representing what you were responsible for through achievement. See, that way you're also showing them that you were responsible for this, but you're going to say, even I was responsible for this, and I also achieved this, right? So that is far more effective compared to just listing down what you were responsible for in any form of context, even for experiences or even for projects. So here's a hack that you can use to ensure you're always presenting anything that you do in an achievement-based format. It's called the XYZ method, and it's a very easy and simple method to understand. Essentially, you want to tell them what you wanted to achieve, how you achieved it, and the result of it. So it goes something like this. I wanted to accomplish X and I accomplished it by doing Y, and the result was Z, or you can say it was measured by using Z, right? So that is the XYZ method. So in this sentence, you clearly show the recruiter this is what you were responsible for, this is what you did for that responsibility, and this was essentially the result. So compare the two. You're saying I was responsible for doing this versus I was responsible for doing this, and doing that I was able to achieve this. Is far better and more effective for a recruiter to see the second one rather than the first one. So it all boils down to what I said in the beginning. Recruiters want data to make a decision. In the second method, you're actually giving them more than enough data to properly make a decision on whether to move forward with you or not to. So that is really important. So when you are listing down experiences, rather than putting it into one giant paragraph, you want to have 2 to 3 different bullet points explaining what you were responsible for, what you did, and the results of what you essentially did. And just like I said before, if you don't have a measurement of your work, you can estimate. But if you don't have an actual measurement of your work, I would highly recommend you start measuring. Figure out KPIs for yourself. If your boss won't figure out KPIs for yourself, keep them personally. Make personal KPIs, keep tabs of it so you can actually include them in future resumes, because that impact is what essentially makes a normal resume stand out from the rest of the resumes. So I hope that really helps, right? So let's move on to like a pretty simple example. So over here, we're using the XYZ method to show a recruiter what you essentially did. I increased user retention by 25% by redesigning an onboarding flow using React and Redux. That way you're showing, hey, this was the tech stack that I was using, this was the result, this was what I was responsible for. It's far better than saying I was responsible for using React and Redux to create whatever, right? So this is far better, and it has more information that helps a recruiter come to a conclusion. So next up, we're going to look at exactly what recruiters are looking for, and I kind of spoiled it to you at the beginning of the session. It's essentially data to make a decision on whether to move forward with you or not. And so since we already talked about this, we'll probably not spend too much time on this, but we'll look at this resume that I have put up here. It's actually a real resume that I made for one of my students. And this student, he was a full stack developer for over 10 years. And remember, I told you the only reason why you would put a summary is if you have over 5 years of experience. That's what exactly he has done. And not only that, he has properly explained what he has done, how his impact has affected his company, and all of those. So this summary will actually help me make a decision, as opposed to a summary that just says you're a team player or you're a problem solver or anything of that sort of line, right? So next, one thing that I do not recommend is putting your education second. But there is a special reason why I wanted him to do that. It's because he has gone to a very prestigious university and his GPA was absolutely absolutely perfect. So that's the reason why his education is there. And then he goes on to listing his experiences and then the skills. It still follows that line of hierarchy where he has listed his skills based on different contexts, like server-side skills and client-side skills. So that's the same principle I want you guys to follow. I have blurred out his information for obvious reasons. But yeah, that's how you want to follow the hierarchy of a resume. So for example, if I got handed this resume, there is a very high chance that I will interview this person to see like what he is like. So that's essentially what I want you to kind of make your resumes as well. Just use this as a sort of an example. Don't properly copy it, but be creative. I'll tell you some tools in the end of this session as well, which you can use to make a really standout resume, because that's one of the pitfalls that I see people not using the proper tools. But we'll get to that in a later time of the workshop. So essentially, again, we've talked about this before, what to include. The 4 most important things experience, projects, skills, and any links. So links is really important and something that a lot of people leave out. Links to your portfolio, your GitHub, and your LinkedIn. These three things are absolutely critical when it comes to a resume. LinkedIn, GitHub, and portfolio. Portfolio, sometimes it's okay, depending on like the recruiter, it's okay to not have a portfolio, because I understand people with a lot of experience working places, they don't have a portfolio because they just don't have the time to work on personal projects. That's perfectly excusable. But the GitHub and the LinkedIn, specifically the LinkedIn, is absolutely critical to any good resume, because the LinkedIn is essentially something that complements your resume, and people, once they select a resume, they double cross or cross check the LinkedIn as opposed to the resume. So it's really important that you guys essentially have those links up. So these four things really important to include in your resume. If you don't have any other section, always include these four sections: experience, project, links, and skills. Really, really important. Next up, let's actually move on to how you can get through an ATS system and understand what an ATS system is. So, like I said, when I hire people, I get over 300 different applications, and that is on one of the lower numbers when it comes to recruiters. You see, multi-million dollar companies or giant companies with big names, they get 10,000s of different applications just for one role. And it's humanly impossible to go through all 10,000 applications. That's where the ATS system comes into place, the application tracking system. This is essentially the first layer of screening when it comes to any application. It's really easy to get through these ATS systems if you know what you're doing. And that's essentially what I'm going to teach you today. Everything that I've taught you so far will get you through pretty much any ATS system out there. And that's not even an understatement. That's not even like an overstatement, I would say. It's just a fact. It will get you through the ATS systems. The thing you want to understand about ATS systems is that it's like a search engine. It's looking for keywords for specific roles. The key to getting through any ATS system is customizing resumes for each individual role. And you might think that is a lot of work. So for example, people usually apply for like 40 to 50 different roles before actually getting called to an interview. So does that mean you need to update your resume 40 to 50 different times? Yes, but you don't have to do it manually. The thing is, there are tools specifically made for resume creation that I want you to use to create resumes. You see, a lot of the people who make resumes nowadays, they fall into this one pitfall, and that is they use Canva to make their resumes. That's not advisable. I mean, it's not going to make your resume stick out, because me personally, if I have 100 different resumes coming to me, I would say 50 of them are Canva templates, and they look exactly the same. The same dark blue like column on the left with all your personal information and your picture and your experience off to the left. It's the same template copied over and over and over and over. It is not something that I would recommend anyone to use for creating a resume. Using Google Word or using Microsoft Word is a better option than using Canva, in my opinion. But the best way for you to make a resume and make sure it passes an ATS check is to use specific resume focused tools like either Careerflow or something like Enhanced CV. So those offer really great free plans as well. But if you want to go the extra mile, then you can just pay for it. It's not too expensive. I'm not sure about the prices per se, but I highly recommend those two tools when you want to create your resumes. The reason being, it will automatically tailor your resume to fit different roles. So if you're applying for 50 different roles, all you have to do is make one resume and then give Enhanced CV or Careerflow the different roles you are applying to, and for each individual role that you send it, it will tailor make and litter that resume with keywords specific to that role. And the best part is, these tools come fitted with ATS systems themselves. So you can check beforehand to see whether your resume will pass an ATS system before you actually apply. And that's the main reason why I would recommend to use specialized tools rather than tools that are not specialized. Again, you don't want to make your resume very overly colorful, nothing like that. For example, look at the resume that I just showed you about Marcus. It's very minimal, and that's what I would recommend. If you are looking for a template to use for your resumes, use the Harvard template or the Oxford template. You can just go to Google and then look at those resume templates. Those templates are what I would recommend for any sort of resumes. So that is how you want to essentially create a really stunning resume that essentially guarantees you will be called to an interview. It's essentially just how you communicate and present your data and information to a recruiter so that they can make a decision on you. Let's then talk about some mistakes that you should avoid. And I've talked about a lot of these before in the workshop, but let's just go through them one at a time. Overly long resumes, completely avoid them as much as possible. Try your best to always limit your resume to 1 page. If you absolutely cannot, then 2 pages, still fine. No more than 2 pages. It's not something that I would ever recommend. The next mistake I would tell anyone to avoid is not having quantifiable skills and including a lot of fluff in your resumes. Stuff like exaggerating things, saying you're like a triple X coder or something like that. It's not going to really help at all. And also missing links. Like I said before, links are really important. LinkedIn, most important. GitHub, also important. And optionally, your portfolio. It just makes people trust you as a developer more. And then the final tool that I just talked, and then the final mistake that I just talked about is using unprofessional or unspecialized tools. If you don't want to use any other tool, please stick to Microsoft Word or Google Documents to just make a normal PDF. That's perfectly fine. I would stay far away from Canva as possible for resumes. If you're a graphic designer or anyone is using Canva to make like an invite or anything, perfect tool, absolutely perfect tool. I have no hate to Canva. Me personally have Canva Premium. I love Canva. I use it just to make quick designs for anything that I need, for example, presentations or anything. But for resumes, it's just not the tool. It's not specified for resumes. So just stick to either Microsoft Word or Google Docs. If not, if you want to go the extra mile, I 100% recommend specialized CV tools like the ones I mentioned before. And those aren't the only tools out there. There are multiple other different tools out there. You can do your own research and figure out what fits you the best, as long as it's a specialized tool for making resumes. So to end things off, we'll go into some questions that my students have asked me that I think you guys would essentially like answers to as well. The first one, should I update my resume for every single job? Yes, we answered that question before. Using tools like Enhance CV or Career Flow, it's very easy for you to do because it automatically does that for you. Experience versus projects. You always want to start off with experience, because the truth is experience trumps everything. The more experiences you have, the higher the chances of getting a job is. But if you're a beginner or if you are a person transitioning into Web3, then always start with projects. And that's why doing projects is so important. You want to always be building something and then linking it on your GitHub. Never stop building if you don't have any sort of experience, because projects is what's going to give you your first Web3 job. And it's really important that you essentially understand that these projects aren't just projects. They should be things that actually solve a problem and is a project that actually gives recruiters an understanding about like what you are as a developer. So it's really important. And if you feel like you don't know any ideas for projects, you can go to GitHub, find existing projects to get ideas. If not, you can go to different boot camps like what Metana offers, which is like purely project based. So at the end of those boot camps or the end of those months, you'll have a few different projects that you can actually list on your resume and you're ready to start applying for jobs. So it's really important, experience above everything else. But if you're a beginner or someone transitioning into Web3, projects will also get you your first Web3 job. Finally, again, this is something for people transitioning into Web3. Most of those people, most of my students who are transitioning to this industry, they ask me, okay, I have this experience where I was working as a salesperson. I have this experience working as a different job. How do I list this in my resume? Well, it's simple. You add a new section called additional experiences that come after your project section. You don't put your experience as the first thing in that scenario. You put your projects as your first thing, and then saying additional experiences, list down your other unrelated experiences you've had. So that is how you essentially build a resume that will stand out from everything else that a recruiter will get. And trust me, if you follow this and make a very stunning resume, if you pass it through an ATS system, you will definitely get called for interviews. So yeah, that's essentially what I have to offer you in this webinar. We talked a lot about how you can build a stunning resume for Web3 roles. And this not only applies for Web3 roles, this applies for any tech related role as well. So I hope you learned a lot from this, and I hope that your resume game is going to improve a lot. So that essentially is the workshop, and we have now come to an end of our session. So I hope you guys learned a lot of valuable information and some industry insights coming from a recruiter's perspective on how to make a resume and what we essentially look for when receiving a resume. And I hope that really helps you guys in getting your dream job in Web3. It was a pleasure doing this workshop for you guys. I will see you in the next one.